Sacred Places, the Pantheist Experience, the show where we explore the philosophy of pantheism and the personal experience of nature-centered spirituality. I'm your host, Poffo Ortiz, founder of Biopantheism, the ethics-based codification of pantheism that stresses the importance of biological life and seeks a deeper, more meaningful relationship with the eminent and emergent divinity of nature we call the Omnia. We are all connected, and we are all one. Welcome, everyone. Today we have our good friend Guyus Seralius. I say anymore, so catch me if I do that. I say and sort of a lot. But my good friend Guyus here, and he is interested in the pandeistic connection, the pandeistic element of biopantheism. And he's actually come up with several questions for me that he's typed up. And I thought that it would be more informative and productive if we created like a podcast and we can just discuss this, in an open setting publicly, and I can turn it into another episode of Sacred Places. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. Right quick, you can't hear my fan, can you? That's not an interruption.
I don't hear anything now. You're coming through loud and clear, and hopefully you can't hear mine, but my audio tends to be crappy. So
okay. I created these, I'll tell you right quick, I created these questions because these are questions that kept popping up in my head since we've known each other, because I've gotten to know a little bit about your philosophical views, and I know you've kind of gained an interest in Pandeism, and I don't know how long you have been interested in any form of deism, but just little things like I would see on your website, little things I'd be like, I need to ask him about that, or I need to ask him about, how does he view this?
Let me clarify if you don't mind. It wasn't that I gained an interest in pandeism. It was that as I went deeper into biopantheism and learning of all the various sort of sub threads, what do you call it, of pantheism, like various forms of pantheistic thought. As I discovered pandeism, it just clicked that it was intuitively origins.
Yeah, I know that
it made sense.
You and I tend to have like more tailored views of pantheism, and so I'm sure that when you were examining your tailored views, and then you kept hearing about pandeism, and then you saw that parallel, you saw, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't that I incorporated pandeism into biopan. It's that, like, literally as biopan was developing, I recognized that my views were pandeistic. Yeah,
right.
That there's an overlap there. Okay, so without being too complex and stuff, I did start to read your first question, and I just wanted to clarify one thing, and then you could read the questions if you like. But it wasn't the first question. It was in your intro. When I read your explanation as to why God annihilated itself for subjective experience, it reminded me of this epic story I've been writing. Okay, so when we talk about it in those terms, and we say God annihilated itself, that is not an accurate description of anything. It's the closest we can get when putting things in tangible terms. So, like,
yeah, I know the human language is very limiting, and sometimes we have to use metaphors and
right. So none of this should be taken literally. Like the words we use and the phrases we use are just I'm at a loss for words here. They're a way of sort of bringing us to that point in a tangible sense, because what we're really talking about is ineffable. Like, what we're really talking about is beyond description, it's beyond words, it's beyond understanding. So these are all we can only speak in metaphor, using symbolism, using personification. So I don't want the listeners to take any of this literally. It's literally, as Joseph Campbell says, the penultimate. It's the closest we can get to the actual understanding of it. We're grabbing all the shapes and forms and colors, but never really the object itself, because to really
we're just trying to engage closer and closer as much as we can, but we have to be aware that we'll never be able to stare into the sun directly, and get a perfect.
I stare at the sun all the time. I was staring straight at the sun during that eclipse. That's just me.
To throw out another metaphor, if we try to stare too deeply into the sun, we'll only become blinded.
Sure.
So I always tell people, metaphorically speaking, we kind of need to look at the corner of our eyes, the peripheral view of life, so to speak, and kind of.
I think that's really all we can really do is judge, the shapes and colors, and we'll never really be able to truly define it, but we can come close enough that we can it will give us meaning and purpose and peace, a peaceful understanding of all this. So go ahead and read your questions. Start reading the questions, and I'll go ahead and answer them. And I have not yet read these questions, just to clarify. I've not read them yet.
And to let any possible viewers know, just I have this in front of me, these set of questions, and they're not meant to judge you, in any kind of weird, harsh way. This is just for me to try to better understand your worldview and your viewpoint. Although, there's going to be some judgment, of course. I can't avoid that completely, but it's all good. Okay.
Bring it on.
The first one is, you said that Pandeism includes the view that, and here's quotes, before time and space, as we know it, God annihilated itself and became the physical universe for the purpose of novel and subjective experience. And that part, remember, I partly identify with, because that's, like I was saying in my book, Empires of the Gods. There's a similar theme there that I use, but I won't get into that. My question is, how did God annihilate itself and become the physical universe in a state where time and space did not exist? Because annihilation and becoming are verbs. They're actions that require time and sequence. So we have this duration.
Actually, there's nothing. Yeah, actually, there's nothing that says that that an action requires time. Time is just a way that we record. Time is a system by which we record entropy, in a sense.
But would you say that one event happens prior to another event? Like you have a sequence of events?
Yeah. What we're talking about, well, first of all, you have to understand my concept of time is I don't believe that time exists except in human perception. Like time is almost irrelevant in the universal sense. Everything is happening at the same time all at once, since we are finite sort of subjective beings trapped in. We experience things in a linear sense because we age, because of mass and density and all these things and general relativity. But essentially, all things that are happening. There is only the now, and we are trapped within that now, and so we experience it in a linear sense. But time is actually cyclical. It's literally there's no beginning, there's no end. It's always happening, and it's just to the experiencer, to the subjective experiencer. There is the sensation, the passage of time, the concept of future, the concept of the past as our memories. So first, that's what you have to understand first, that there is no time as such.
Okay, so far we're on the same page as far as that goes, because in my own philosophical views, I believe that time is something that is experienced by the perceiver, that it's a limited point of view of the universe. But if you look at the totality of it all, it's kind of nonsensical to think of it in terms of the flow of time, I'll say, sense. But whenever we use terms like the one that you used, like you used the preposition before time and space, that's when I'm forced to ask questions like, and when we say words like become, well, there's obviously an event or a series of events that involves or the term becoming labels or trying to communicate or express. So
before time and space as we know it, as it's been recorded, before the initial Big Bang 14.8 billion years ago, 13.8 billion years ago, we're literally talking about pre-Big Bang. That's all. And there is no pre-Big there was no time before the Big Bang. We have no knowledge of anything before the Big Bang. We only can extrapolate, and that's what Pandeism does. Is it extrapolates? It has nothing to do with looking back, and through scientific studies, we know that the universe is 14 billion years old. Where all of this comes about is in observing the trajectory of nature and in evolution, and the capacity or the volume and sort of substance that was in that explosion, the first moment of time, contained within it all of the laws of nature, all the inherent laws of nature were already there, and then it's just been progression since then, and that's why we know this as Pandeists and as Biopan. That's why it's been incorporated in. It makes the most sense.
One of the struggles I've always had with the Big Bang Theory, among others, is there's that something that had to initiate the beginning, and then there was that which had to initiate the initiator, and then so on. So it kind of creates an infinite chain of causation or regression.
Well, it's an infinite cycle. It's an infinite cycle of being. Is that existence? There has always nature, God, Omnia, the forever all, has always existed. And all we're talking about in the beginning is the transition or the transformation from one form to another.
Okay, and we'll see. Some of these questions, by the way, are going to sound a little redundant. They have little subtle differences, which I'll try to go into. So based on what you're just now saying, let me also feed into number 2, which is, and we already kind of discussed this, how could God exist without space or without what we experience as the physical universe? And to me, it's like saying a triangle can exist without angles, which to me is impossible. To me, the universe and God are one and the same and could never have been otherwise, not even for the briefest moment.
I agree with you. Guys. That's why we're both pantheists. See, you're getting hung up in the semantics. And actually, if we don't make this succinct, we're going to be here forever. So, like, how could God exist without space or without what we experience as the physical universe? Of course, God has always existed, because the potentiality for everything to exist was already there at the moment of the Big Bang. And when you're saying the triangle can exist without angles, certainly impossible. Everything that you're stating of this particular manifestation of the universe, of this particular, the laws of physics that are operating the way they are right now. It's not that God exists outside space or time. It's that God is all that exists. And in this particular rendition of God, what we have are these particular laws. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, you're making me jump to question number 8. Let me go ahead and read this out, and then we'll finish out those thoughts.
Okay.
So in one sense, you believe in a beginning, but then express that it's all cyclic and eternal, which I believe it is, eternal and cyclic. To me, how can both of these statements fully be true? So it begs the question, do you believe in an ultimate creation and an ultimate true beginning, or do you believe the universe has ultimately always existed and always will, as I do? And it sounds like it's the latter. It sounds like you do believe that it has always existed.
The observable universe has not always existed. But when we say the universe, and we're speaking of God and Omnia, that has always existed. But the observable universe has only existed for, but 13.8 billion years. When you say that I believe that there was a beginning, the beginning of this particular universe, as we can detect with recordable data through detection. Like, we're only talking about 13.8 billion years that we can observe. But what initiated all of it is what has, I believe, always existed in one form or another.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I share that view. One of the things I do, one of the things I explain at the beginning of the book that I was working on, is that we have to start somewhere in terms of communicating this unfolding, the way the universe unfolds, in order to better understand it. So it's almost more of a metaphor, claiming that there's a beginning to it all. It's like it's something that we have to we treat it as though it has an origin, just to convey or to express this kind of beginning from the perceiver's point of view, even though it's always been here. we want to explain how it unfolded in a sub, like there's sub portions of the universe, and we want to show how that fruit blossomed on the tree, so to speak.
I'm glad you used the word fruit, because I was about to use the analogy of a seed and say an apple tree. Okay, when did that apple tree, and the seeds and the information encoded in the DNA of that apple tree, when did it come into fruition? When did it come into existence? And when has it not existed? In a sense, that apple tree has always existed as long as the universe has existed, because the particles and the atoms that make up that tree were already there, present at the moment of the Big Bang. Now, in that particular form, in that particular manifestation, in that particular individuated thing of energy, time, space, and matter, it exists in a temporal, limited sense. But where does the apple tree, the fruit, the leaf, the branch, the seed, where does it begin and where does it end? Because that's what we're really talking about. You have a tapestry behind you, like a radial design that spreads out, and it's beautiful. And I have behind me the symbol of Biopan, and it's a series of interlocking circles. Okay, where does a circle begin and where does a circle end? It has no beginning and it has no end. It is cyclical, and it's a continuous revolution of experience, and that's what the universe is. Like, what we can perceive, what we can't perceive, that's what we're really talking about. But in terms of again, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. That butterfly has only existed for a certain amount of time, but before that butterfly it was a cocoon. It was the pupa stage, and before that cocoon, there was a caterpillar, and before that caterpillar there was an egg, and there was the caterpillar, the butterfly that laid the egg before it. So all we're talking about is the cycle of life. If you want to understand my model, all you have to do is apply biological principles. I believe that the universe is biological. That's the point. So everything.
I'm happy to hear that you. I'm happy to hear that you do agree that the universe is one, eternal, and that it is also cyclical. So then I ask another question that I don't even have here. It just brought up. I just brought it up is why do deists, not just pandeists, but deists in general, or no, let me go ahead and stick with pandeists. Or how about you as a pandeist? Why be drawn to a philosophy that sort of frames it as though there is an origin, as though, an ultimate origin? Because I don't know if they would all agree with you. Like, they might actually believe that there is a beginning, a true ultimate beginning, a true origin. And so what attracted you personally to the idea that, even though we don't really believe that there is a true beginning or an origin, like when I present it to people, whenever I talk about a beginning, I'm always careful to let them know that is just from the perceiver's point of view, that is just in pretense, that ultimately the universe has always existed and always will, that it's like this eternal fixed tapestry.
Because it's not deism, because it's not deism that I'm describing, guys. It's not deism at all. Deism is just part of the deism is part of the term pantheism, but it's not deism at all. I don't believe in deism or theism, because a deistic God is a God that made everything. Essentially, a theistic God that just doesn't intervene. It's a God that just the watchmaker that just set everything in motion and then left it alone. And that would be a horrible cosmic entity if there ever was one, a negligent parent and just a horribly irresponsible creator. That's not what I believe at all. That's deism. Deism is simply like, it's what the founding fathers believed. It's simply saying, we know that there's a God that made everything, but we have no way of really connecting with that God, communicating with it. We don't believe in prayer. We don't believe in revealed truth through Scripture. We don't believe in Christianity. We just believe that something made everything because, and here's the answer, because that's all we're able to comprehend. Because we look around and we see creators, we see builders and engineers and people that construct things. So there must have been something, an intelligence that constructed all this. So that's the origin of deism right there. Now, pandeism, it suffers because of the lack of terminology. A better way to say it is pantheism that believes that the universe as a whole was at one time conscious, and that consciousness, annihilation is the wrong word, that consciousness transformed itself into a latent form of consciousness, or into an unconscious state of subjectivity, of differentiated forms. That's the best explanation for pantheism. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. When you say annihilation, I'm actually okay with that term, because you're talking about a state that once existed that loses that particular functionality at that moment, so to speak.
Sure.
And it's being broken up into subparts.
Did the caterpillar annihilate itself when it became the butterfly? No, it just transformed. But you can look at it that way. There's no longer a caterpillar present. What is it? They actually completely liquefy within the cocoon, and then they come out a fully formed butterfly. So the caterpillar no longer exists, but all the carbon-based atoms, all the elements that were there that were present in the caterpillar are also now in the butterfly, right? Yeah. And that's why it's really fascinating when you look at certain moths and caterpillars, moths and butterflies and caterpillars and worms and stuff. When they have similar markings, the caterpillar or the worm, the larva stage, actually looks somewhat like the butterfly, and then when the butterfly has the markings, that's so fascinating to me. So what we're talking about is a universe that has always existed in one form or another, and before the known universe, we have no idea what it was. But I theorize that it was something that held the potential of all that exists now. It had to. It literally had to have within it all of the potential of everything that exists now, because there's no outside source. It's literally its own source.
There's that part of it we would be in agreement on. The only thing that we slightly differ on is, in my worldview model, I'm always believing, you kind of know this about me, but I'll just say this for the viewers. I view it as like an eternal tapestry with all of its parts already in place, and that it's all completely conserved, it's completely fixed, completely balanced. So as far as if you could view the universe, the totality of it all at once, which is impossible, but if you could, it would all be in place. It does not change. Nothing can be added to it. Nothing can be subtracted to it. It does not evolve. It does not slowly become something or more complex or more ordered. It is all perfectly in place. But from our point of view, as a subset of that, as a perceiver, we do experience that unfolding, that story that you explain or that you express, because I see it that way myself. You have the potential that is, metaphorically in a seed or a singularity, as some would say, and then it blossoms out into its potential and unfolds that potential. And that sort of unfolds that story, which is, that story that I'm hoping to write, which is the story of the cosmos and the story of mankind, and then the ultimate story of the ultimate hero, so to speak. But that is, in my model, that is always happening. Also, if you think of it as a film reel, where you have frames of an animation, all the frames are really already in place. Every possible frame that could ever exist in the full tapestry of it all possibilities of how it, the unfolding of it all. It's always there, but from the perceiver's point of view, we're forced to see time. We're forced to see change, evolution. Things get old. Things die. Things transition.
Right.
So
yeah, you just described in your own words, in many words, the same thing I just said. We're talking about Einstein's law, or the law of conservation of energy. I thought that was who was that? I didn't think it was Einstein. Newton?
No. I wrote it down, but now I forget his name. There he is.
No, the law of conservation of energy was Einstein.
Julius Mayer discovered the law of conservation of energy in the mid-1800s. But I guess Einstein did use it a lot. He incorporated it. That was another question that I actually had for you, because I was wanting to make sure that I had the right law, because I didn't know if you were referring to something that Einstein discussed that was separate from Julius's law of conservation of energy. It sounds like
essentially nothing can really be truly created from scratch, everything is just energy transitioning and transforming into something else. That's all.
But the only area that we might differ on, which is okay, is that to me, the universe, as you call Omnia, to me that is not something that progresses or evolves or changes or transitions. That is like this static thing. Omnia is like a statue to me, a fixed statue with all of its unbelievable, divine, intricate parts in place. But we get to experience that those
Guyus, but the universe is evolving, because the universe does not look anything like what it looked like, say, 13 million, 12 million years ago, 10 billion years ago. It's always
our sector, our sector of the universe. That's true. From our point of view as perceivers, I do believe that we get to see progression and transition within our known universe. But to me, to stay true to the true root of that word, universe, it's supposed to represent all possible elements of the cosmos. It's the universe. So in terms of any kind of multiverses, parallel universes, subverses, all those terms that came out kind of later on as a fix to circumvent the outdated term of a finite universe. That's all one universe that has always existed.
Yeah, I agree. I call it the omniverse. The omniverse. It's everything.
Yeah, but don't you believe that your Omnia is something that transitions and something that changes and progresses? It gets more complex, and then it reverses that or implodes and goes through that cyclic.
In terms of its consciousness, in terms of its environment, and the environment is also changing continuously. The environments that the life forms that are birthed from it, the environments are more static, and then the life forms and the organisms, the individual manifestations of life are constantly in transition, and the environments last longer, but those environments change as well. Everything is always in a state of flux and transition, but everything. But what you're talking about, I believe, is more. You're thinking of more the locale or the universe in terms of a. You're making differentiated claims between the local expression and the cosmos, and the totality of it all.
Yeah, if you think of it as a Mandelbrot fractal, an infinite Mandelbrot, I see this infinite thing that is the tree upon the tree upon the tree upon the tree, or like a fruit upon the tree upon the fruit. So it's like this infinite thing that is infinitely within, infinitely without, and there is no way to encapsulate or box up the universe into this package deal, into this singularity, or into this seed, to all share this single moment. Like these moments happen to me. You have things that blossom throughout the universe.
I think I know what you're saying. It's almost like the subjectivity that nature is experiencing now, which I believe will coalesce and come back together. You don't believe that there will ever be a collective consciousness, a singular consciousness that is at all times. You wrote that somewhere, that is at all times, perceiving all, like in omniscience. There's no omniscience that will ever exist. It'll always be differentiated. In your take on it.
Yeah, but at the same time, for example, you represent one of the hubs of the universe perceiving itself. But you see that you're limited, right? You only have so much knowledge, so much awareness of yourself. I don't think that the totality of it all will ever fully be able to know itself.
There are people, right, because otherwise then it would be omniscient, and that's when experience would cease.
Right.
Because there'd be no contrast. There's no subjective. There's no other, But if you look at the way the elliptics, the way circles, the viscous Pisces, the way the flower of life in sacred geometry actually multiplies itself, it starts with a circle, then an overlapping circle, then another overlapping circle, and then it goes again and again to the seed of life to become the fruit of life, the flower of life, and you'll understand that, like, as a circle, it has no expression. It has no movement. It has no knowledge of self. It only once it replicates, just like the first single-celled organism that self-replicated. Then that's when it begins to experience itself, to experience something. Before then, it's just a static thing. But I don't believe that it ever stays that for long. So
I think I know how to explain. I think I know how to explain the dilemma I have with your view. Imagine a circle. I have a circle here.
Are you sure? Are you sure you have a dilemma? Are you sure you're just not understanding it fully? Because I think once you understand it fully, I don't think there'll be a problem. Yeah.
It could be that I don't understand it, but and if we find that out, you're going to help me understand.
Sure, go for it.
Imagine we have a circle in concept, and when you progress along the circle, we experience your worldview, which is this progression of Omnia becoming more and more complex, more and more conscious, and then finally it annihilates itself and starts over to the beginning again. See, I'm thinking in my worldview, that circle always exists. That's always happening. That's always there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't mind discussing and even sharing the view of this progression, because I do. I have that.
Can I blow your mind for a second? You're looking at it one-dimensionally. It's actually a spiral. It's a spiral like this. So what you have is every time there's a revolution, there's a new experience of the universe experience.
Okay, see, now there's where we would disagree. That's important. We got to get back to the circle, because that was just a device, a tool to help you understand how my worldview compares to yours. What I'm simply trying to say is, yes, there's that real that happens of the unfolding, but if you take a step back, that is always in place. That is always happening.
You're describing time, but then it's easy to conflate it with form, with the form of energy and life. And when it comes to form, it's the Fibonacci sequence. It's the golden mean. It's the golden ratio, on all fronts. That's what it is. But if you're talking about time, that also is it's exactly what you said. It's happening all at once, at all time. It's all experience. But for the experiencer, for the subjective form within it, trapped within time, then it appears different.
Actually, for the subjective perceiver, that's where we involve the variable of time. That's where you get progression, transition. Yeah. Talking outside of that, there's going to always be Omnia. And imagine if Omnia was you see that pattern behind you, that beautiful tapestry there? That's Omnia. That's always going to be there. It always will be. It always has been. And nothing can it'll never become destroyed. It'll never become sick or tired or damaged in any way. It's always going to be perfectly that thing, which is actually couldn't be any other way. It had to be that exact design in every way. And yes, within the context of that, we're going to experience the story of the universe. We're going to experience this progression, this inflation and deflation concept. But just know that in my worldview, which may be completely cuckoo, it's always there. It's always static. It's always a permanent, fixed, conserved, balanced thing.
We have to define what it is when you say that, because the laws of nature are fixed in this particular manifestation of the universe. So that's a constant.
When I say it, I'm referring to the infinite set, the infinite cosmos, the forever all, Omnia, or as I would define Omnia, but you may define Omnia a little differently. Let me go ahead and ask you some more of these questions, which will help.
Yeah, we can get back to it. Go back to right where we left off. Was it 3?
Yeah, it's number 4. It'll actually help us hash some of this out. It seems that your view of God chose to annihilate itself. Could God have chosen not to annihilate itself? That's a very important question.
Yeah, I want to answer it. Again, we're using personification and metaphorical language to describe things that are ineffable. Right. If I would describe it, if I could clarify it, I would say it is more akin to breathing. That you don't choose to breathe; it's just literally inhalation and exhalation. It's like the air goes in, process happens, then it goes back out.
Right,
but,
quick. In your defense, I actually believe the universe, that eternal being, can have desires. For example, I view myself to be a being of the infinite universe. I am the infinite universe, and I have desires. I have wants.
Yeah. We're not. In this context, we're not talking about the manifestations, the fingers and the feelers of God or of Omnia. We're talking about Omnia itself. I know, like the.
Like, to make it easy for you,
the pantheistic manifestations, of course, have all those desires and things. But I know we're talking about like the raw form of Omnia itself, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, like, and to make it easy for you, I view you as Omnia. I view me as I'm Omnia. In this particular point in time and space, I represent Omnia, and so do you. And so, but I know that you kind of believe that there might be this totality consciousness that even goes beyond you and me. Maybe not in existence.
Okay, not in existence within time and space as we know it right now. Not in existence right now, but outside of time, in the infinite future, in eternity future, if you want to call it like that. That it already exists. It's already there because it's what actually started all this. It's what initiated all this. So that doesn't. So what you're talking about is almost panpsychism or deism or theism, and I don't agree with that at all. There is no consciousness. There is no singular consciousness in God right now. There's only differentiated forms. What you have is a latent underlying intelligence that is pushing and driving and pulling all conscious life toward greater levels of cohesion and sentience and sapience and awareness.
Okay, and do you believe that you will one day be that consciousness?
Not me in the same cohesive form, not at all. We don't live on in the same cohesive, coherent form after death, the death of the body, death of the brain. But nature itself lives on in trillions of different forms. Yeah.
That brings
the parts that make up who I am will live on in trillions of different forms. My influence, maybe if I have children, which I never will, but my genetics, genetically, my DNA lives on, the information that I've provided, and also the atomic, sort of the chemicals and the atomic makeup structure of my body will live on to fuel other life forms, and those life forms will fuel other life forms. So in that sense, it goes on eternally, but not in the same conscious, coherent form.
Okay, you're helping to answer 14. Which I'm going to jump right into because there's a little more that I want you to expand on.
Jumping around a lot here, man. Hope we get all these done.
Oh yeah. Do you believe that after your human form dies, your mind will never perceive or experience the universe ever again? That your ability to perceive and have experiences has ended forever? I don't mean that you, Poffo, the character Poffo. I know Poffo will die. I get that. Yeah. I'm talking about that perceiving passenger that you are right now. I know that which you are will change.
What I am is an amalgamation of all my thoughts and experiences, my sensory input, my memories, the physical senses, all the biological functioning, all these things, my character, my individuality. That is a unique and novel expression that is 100% temporal. And completely subject to physical entropy. So I will no longer exist once my body dies.
Wait, Poffo. Wait. I know Poffo won't exist. I agree with you. But that perceiving entity that you are, that thing that's able to perceive and experience the universe, even though you're constantly changing from one moment to the next, do you think that perceiving light in the attic will become permanently extinguished?
Of course. Consciousness cannot exist without a living body.
Okay, but
to operate as a vehicle.
There's where you and I would also slightly veer off a little bit, because I actually believe that we never will be without physical body. That yes, it looks like the human form, that physical body did die and deteriorate and what have you, but I don't believe that I can ever be fully divorced or separated from that which is the physical and the body.
Why not? I mean, it's a comforting thought. but it's a carryover from theism and from traditional religions to believe that there's a continuation of consciousness after death of the brain, death of the body. It's a comforting thought, but there's no evidence. There's no evidence for it.
I got to stop you right there. It's more accurate to say it's both a comforting thought and a terrifying one, because as we've discussed before, life isn't all that great, right? I mean, it's not all that bad, but it's actually quite.
Depends on who you are. If you're born in this world as a cow, or a chicken, or a sheep, or a turkey, or a pig, life is pretty goddamn horrible.
It usually involves a lot of suffering, a lot of fear, a lot of depression, a lot of uncertainty. So when people say that to me, because I've had them say that before, that is, first of all, the reason why I believe anything that I believe, it's usually primarily based on what I observed and what I rationally believe to be the truth. So I try to remove my emotions, or what I would like to be true, or what I wish that was true. I try to remove that from the way I analyze the world.
That's noble. That's a true mark. That's the mark of a true intellectual. So what makes you believe it?
Well, the reason why I believe that is because I can't help but to believe that, based on all that I've learned and what I believed, what I think to be the truth. Based on error, everything that I've read, everything that I've learned, which is subject to error, of course. We're constantly being bombarded with disinformation, misinformation, but just based on the available information that I have so far, I believe that the perceiving mind is part of an unending continuum. It's part of that Omnia. Omnia cannot be destroyed. Omnia and you, the perceiver, which is sort of like if the apex of Omnia, you're the nucleus of Omnia right now. And even though it can give the illusion, it's actually one of the universe's greatest sleight of hand tricks to make us think that when our physical human form dies, that
you're explaining it, but you're not giving me any evidence for that.
I can try. For example,
we can get back to this too. You can finish your questions and we can go back and talk about it after.
Right. This is actually one of the hardest things, this very topic, to communicate. And I've been trying to find the best way to craft out this explanation, because it's actually one of the most profound questions man has probably ever struggled with.
Is there life after death? Is what you're asking?
Yeah, right.
Is there a continuation of consciousness? After.
I've now gotten to the point where it's harder for me to believe the opposite, just based on what I've learned about the universe, what the universe has taught me. But I'll give you one quick example. A lot of near-death experiences. One of the things that they have in common is that they all find themselves emerging from their face, that they're coming away from their face. And yes, I do believe that a lot of what their experiences, what have been described, are hallucinations and dreams and all that. But there are certain things that are shared that defy the probability that it just happened to be part of their dream state. Because, I almost never dream anything like that. So to me, there's, without trying to go into too much detail right now, because that's a whole other podcast, but there is a continuation, whether we like it or not, for better or for worse, to continue to have moments of
so you're
pleasure.
basing your evidence on the anecdotal evidence or the counts of NDEs, which I think is a fascinating subject that we should explore.
Not just that.
Yeah.
That's just one small piece of the overall puzzle.
I do think I don't necessarily think that consciousness is always. This was going to seem contradictory to my earlier statement, but I don't think that consciousness is necessarily local. I believe that. See, what you're describing has always taken place with a person who's come back. And it's never happened to a person who has completely died for 5 years and then come back. There's always been a body that's still intact and able to be a receiver for the consciousness. So what I'm saying is
people who have been frozen. This is an interesting one. The ones that have actually been frozen for several hours, or I think even days, and then were brought back, and so they had the physical form, right? To
right.
To me, I believe that in nature, that when something happens to this, for example, we get an arm cut off or legs cut off, we're still here. We're different, but we're still here. If you lose your eye, or let's say they take out your brain and put it in a jar of fluid and hook wires up to it, again, you're still here, the perceiving entity that you are. You're different. Your experiences are going to be different, and the way you communicate to the world is going to be different. And I guarantee you can keep doing that. You can remove some load.
But you're making my point. You're making my point for me. There has to be enough of the physical form for there to be a receiver for consciousness.
I actually agree with that. I've written that in my book, that we will always have to have, I don't care if you believe in spirits or ghosts or whatever, I believe that you will always be of the physical world. And you will, in order to be a perceiving entity, you have to have that which is, you have to be, we say it's less and less of the physical body, but really your body is always, in my opinion, the infinite all. That's your body. That's your physical body. And it will always be here. You will always be a part of it. And it will change. That relationship will always change. And that actually brings me to one of my questions, where you were saying that you believe that one day during this progression that we will finally become, where we will go beyond the physical form, that you believe we can, the perceiving mind can be separate or not need the body. Not
as human beings. We'll no longer be called humans then. We'll no longer be classified as human beings.
But you believe that the perceiving...
I mean life. The most successful species on this planet or any other will eventually unite and coalesce to form a collective mind, a collective consciousness with every other life form. It might not be human beings that make it that far. It definitely won't be the human form. But in terms of consciousness itself will continue to evolve and eventually assimilate with every other form of consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, but didn't you say that consciousness will one day be able to go beyond the reaches of the physical, the necessity of a physical body? That you can have a perceiving mind.
Yes, because everything. Yes, because we'll be able to manipulate matter, space, and time. We'll be able to literally transform, as we do now in a very crude and primitive way. We transform the elements around us into different shapes and forms.
But I thought you said we need the body always. That we always, in order to have the perceiving mind, we need the body.
Yeah.
Physical.
Yeah, you're not letting me finish though, guys.
Okay.
The point is that, like, as we manipulate our environments now, and as we reshape matter right now, like as any artist would do with clay, eventually it's not a far off, it's not too far of a leap, the extension of our minds using our psychic abilities essentially to manipulate without the use of hands, but literally through thought, through the power of our perception, that we will literally be able to perceive. The best way I could describe this, life is like a dream, okay? And right now we're locked into the parameters of that dream, i.e. the laws of nature. But once we become lucent in that dream, we can literally reshape it into anything we want. We can redesign our bodies, we can fly, we can become an animal, we can have sex with whatever beautiful girl we want. We can travel to a location at the speed of thought. We can literally recreate the environment because we're in a dream world. And
yeah,
but
don't you think that dream world has rules?
No, it doesn't. The only rules that are there are the limits of your own imagination. So what I'm trying to say is, because I'm still trying to get to my point here, what I'm trying to say is, once we recognize that we are the dreamer, that the entire universe is the dream of God, and that we are God, we become lucent, and we can literally reshape our environment at the power of thought, the speed of thought. Once you recognize that you're actually right now, this is a metaphor, but once you recognize that you're asleep and this is a dream, you can start to control it, and it's just like Neo in the Matrix, and you wake up. That will eventually happen. Eventually,
I believe that in part, that right now, because I'm aware of that now, but I do believe that our dreams will always be dictated by rules, by the laws of Omnia.
Only by our perception, only by the perception of the reality that we've already experienced. So if you've never experienced,
but that's an echo and
a triangular.
That's an expression and echo of that yin yang format. You know, there's a set of rules that we've been so ingrained with, that are so embedded in our psyche and our makeup. It's like you can never escape that yin yang seed that is deep within us, and so we're gonna always have those struggles, even in the psyche. Like, because
you're jumping around a little bit. It's almost like you're opposed to equilibrium. You feel like there always has to be contrast and conflict, and there has to be contrast in order to experience anything. But what we're talking about is greater creative power. We're talking about apotheosis. We're talking about the ascension to godhood, so to speak, that we literally become the masters of our own environments and reshape reality.
But that's going towards one major extreme, saying there's this absolute freedom, there's this absolute total control. And I'm of the opinion that the universe always seems to keep these shackles.
Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong, guys. Listen, like you're jumping all over the place, and I know your thoughts are really profound and deep and complex, just like mine. But you're not letting me get to the point so you can understand it. Like, you're right. And the way that you're right is by this reality right now, because what you're talking about, the homeostasis, the complete total. Let's use real simple terms here. When we collectively become God, okay, we will no longer desire that, and we will give it up, and we will desire novelty and resistance and change and challenges. And that's why the universe began. And it'll start all over again in some other form, in some other way. Who knows? But that's the point, is Omnia, nature, doesn't know how it's going to transpire, how it's going to turn out. It's not predetermined. It's a spiral of ever-evolving, continuous experience.
You said it's not predetermined?
Yeah. No, it's not predetermined. It's not predetermined for the experiencers. It's not predetermined for the collective all. And that's not to be confused with the idea that it all exists in eternity. In eternity, it's all happening at once. We can only perceive it in a limited sense, but it's a spiral, man. It's a vortex. It's just like a tornado.
That the way in which it unfolds, that is due to the influence of what happened prior. Each stage.
Yeah, everything is causal. It's all a causal chain of events that never ends. So in that sense, it's deterministic. You understand? Right. But it's not fatalistic. It's not fatalistic. It's not. There's no destiny. It's literally new and novel each and every time, and that's the entire purpose of existence.
Well, I have to disagree with that, but I respect in fact, let me ask you, what led you to that particular view?
Observation of nature, intuitive knowing, and observation of nature, and the life cycles, the seasons, the processes of nature, our biological functions, cosmology.
I do that too, and when I look at the seasons, for example, I see this cyclical, deterministic thing, and to me, our destinies have already been written in stone. I mean, even before this planet was formed, it was written that you and I would be having this conversation. In fact, if you were to rewind everything and set everything into motion again, everything would unfold exactly as it did before, and you and I would have this exact same conversation, no matter how many times we tried to restart it over. Now, I know quantum physicists will say, differently, that it happens differently each time that we reset it. But I have a lot of disagreements with quantum theory. But
yeah, I mean, you have to. I would suggest just really analyze your motives behind believing these things. Like, when I came up with my ontology, my cosmological perspective, there was no personal motivation for any form of comfort or even peace of mind or anything. It's literally just what the science and what the observation tells me.
Right. Yeah, I try to do that as much as possible. I mean, of course, I'm human, and every now and then it seeps in. It leaks.
But many of your statements sound very like forced and mandatory. It has to be this. It cannot be any other way. It's always going to be consistently blah 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 blah. Almost as if there's a form of comfort in that.
Well, I will
dogma.
I will admit to the fact that I do, in part, see some comfort in it. I won't hide the fact that, to me, when you look at the universe, the totality of it all, some of it is comforting, some of it is terrifying and disappointing. So I can't say that it's not somewhat comforting to me to believe that the infinite machine that we're a part of is fixed and can never be destroyed, and that it's all predetermined. Now, some things, in some ways, it does disappoint me, but in a lot of ways, it does comfort me. But that's not to say that's why I believe it. That would be a mistake to think that the reason why I believe.
Yeah, I would just suggest. I believe you. I'm sure that your intentions are noble and logical and sincere.
There's a lot of things I believe that are very undesirable. In fact, if you knew some of them I actually don't publicize because they're so they would be so disappointing to people, so terrifying, and so.
I think you should do podcasts more often, guys, because you got a lot. It seems like you need to get out.
But there's things that people would not be comfortable with at all. But I, and myself included, but. I can't help but to believe them. And there are times when I come to these revelations and these epiphanies, and I'm like, God damn, really? I think to myself, well, that sucks.
Well, remember that you're just a subjective form, and you could just as easily be wrong about them. We have to analyze and compare and cross-examine every every theory, every outlook, every perspective in order to come to the truth.
Yeah, I never write my views in stone, more like a soft wax, because I know they're always subject to change.
Right. So let me get back to the questions, and I'll try to get through them. So, number 3, in your view, are the two following statements both true and equivalent? Does the universe become God and God – wait, does the universe became God? Number 3.
Oh, number 3? That was a good one. I did want to ask that.
The universe. Yeah. Well, I'm asking it for you. I'm reading it. The universe became God, and God became the universe. In your view, are those two statements interchangeable? Wait, if the universe became God and God became the
not if. I mean, I'm just saying that are both of these statements completely equivalent? The universe became God, and the statement God became the universe. So they're in different opposite directions of each other.
You're right. They're in opposite directions of each other chronologically, because the universe will become God, and God will become the universe in the past.
Okay.
God will become the universe in the past. The universe will become God in the future, and we're right in the middle of the universe becoming God right now.
Okay, now that I know how you would answer that question, and we've kind of already discussed this organically before, what was God before it became the universe? What was God and where was God in your model, in your
before this physical universe? Okay,
so there's God and he's going to become the universe. So what is God and where is God before he becomes the universe?
This is to avoid any lofty extrapolations and theorizing. Let me put it in the simplest way. Number 1, there is no tangible, scientific, testable, empirical way to determine the answer to that question. But what we have is the universe and everything in it. What we have is the unfolding of all of these things based on the laws of nature and the trajectory. Even though evolution is blind, the path of greater and greater levels of consciousness and awareness, and we see the patterns, and we see the potential, and we see the potential within all things. So looking at nature and looking at the universe, we can extrapolate and say everything that exists on this side of the Big Bang must have existed on the other side of the Big Bang. in some shape or form. And honestly, as we've already discussed, it's all there. It was all already there, just in an undetectable form. So what I say is, since we are moving towards greater levels of consciousness, since the universe is allowing all life forms to evolve and adapt and grow and become more and more conscious and cohesive and coherent and in sync with itself, then I believe that's where we came from. Because if that's where we're going,
okay,
I think that's where we came from. I feel like that's where we came from because everything here was already here in the singularity that existed at the moment of the Big Bang.
That singularity event that you're talking about right there, to me, and you kind of already know this, in my worldview, that is one berry on the tree. That, there's this cosmic tree, and then that tree is a berry on a larger tree.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And I was trying to get to this point before, that berry or that seed contains within it all the information for a whole other tree. It's
right.
It's like the DNA encoded in our genes, in our cells, in the chromosomes. It's all there. The information is all already there in that seed. So the seed is the tree is the seed, is the branch, is the leaf, is the fruit, is the flower, and it just goes on and on and on. Like that's just a small point, the funnel, where it all got funneled into and then exploded back outward. So when you look at a seed,
the reason why you brought it up was because you just said it, that it all gets funneled into, and I'm trying to say that I don't think the universe can be encapsulated into this singular.
Of course it can, because you're thinking of time. Because you're thinking of time and space as physical objects. Yeah,
I do believe that conceptually it can be encapsulated, but not in a.
It's very simple. It's very simple, guys. Just look at a piece of fruit, and that piece of fruit started from a singular seed. You have that seed, and contained within it will eventually become the tree, which will eventually become the giant tree, the leaves, the branches, and another series of fruits. So all of that is contained in that single seed. When I pluck one singular piece of hair from my head, you have enough information there in the DNA to completely replicate and create a whole new Poffo. You can clone me. You can clone me just by using a strand of hair. So think of the singularity as that strand of hair.
Right.
Think of the Big Bang point as just that strand of hair before it. I think of mold now, the way mold will sprout and grow and proliferate just from a single little speck.
I agree with, in part, what you're saying there, that I do believe, and this is my own philosophical views, that I do believe that all the information, all the conceptual possibilities can be within for example, within a single atom. But in my view, that atom, that seed, that fruit is within, it resides upon a stage and must always be within a fruit of the universe, an infinite universe that goes that way. It can never be just the seed. That's all I'm saying. It can't be ever just.
But you don't understand that the seed is everything. See, you're limited. I can see where you're thinking. You're limited your mind is limited by the constructs of this physical reality. What you're not understanding is size is irrelevant. Like, we're not talking about size. We're talking about potential.
Well, that's what I would say. But you're the one that seems to think you can encapsulate it, actually physically, that you can reduce it to time and space.
We're not talking about. No, we're not talking.
I'm the one who's saying no, you can't.
You know what? I just realized you have the wrong impression of what the Big Bang was. That's the problem. I realize this. The Big Bang was not a small, infinitesimal point of density.
Well,
that's how they
describe it as infinite density.
I know the descriptions. I know the definitions. I'm trying to explain it to you. The only reason they describe it that way, guys, is because that's all they can. That's the only way that they can perceive it within classic Newtonian physics, Newtonian laws.
You do remember that documentary I pointed to, where they say that theory never actually held water. That it doesn't hold water, and it never did, and that it really didn't. It shouldn't have been pushed forward. That there are now really good evidence that actually shows the contrary, that the universe is not this thing that is expanding in the way that they describe, and that the Big Bang is very likely not this single first-time event that happened. And that the more people, especially young students, young college students, who keep coming out of their university with that theory in their head, it's going to lead them astray, because they're thinking this Big Bang thing is like rock solid and it's worth its weight in gold. And
it is, guys. It is on a certain level. I understand what you're saying, and the theories that
I think it's possible
to refute it. No, it is on a certain level, because what they've done is they've reverse engineered the universe, and they know that's why they know it goes back to a singular point. But what I'm trying to tell you is that singular point was not really the beginning. That was just one point in a series of transitions.
That's how they're now characterizing it to save their ass, because they used to claim, even the documentaries, they would always say,
as the understanding grows, they're going to keep building on it and reforming it. Yeah,
they're trying to now refinesse it and resell it, repackage it and resell it in the way that what you just said. That they're now even Stephen Hawking is now helping them to see that there wasn't a first-time origin or beginning, that the universe has always.
There can't be, because that's the problem of infinite regress. That's why I'm saying, to me, this became very.
I see that now, but when they first started doing that reverse engineering, it was literally as bad as me looking at an oak tree and thinking, okay, I can reverse engineer that back to the seed, and by the same logic, consider that it too came from a singularity, which is actually nonsensical. But there is not enough evidence by any stretch of the imagination to support even the redshift data, because that's the whole redshifts is what led Hubble to believing that the further objects are, the faster they're moving away, and that the universe is expanding.
I mean, your problem is not with my model necessarily, Guyus. Your problem is with the conventional theories about the Big Bang. But if you listen, like, I'm not refuting what you're saying, and it's almost a separate discussion. Like
I do believe that there are local Big Bangs and big crunches. I believe that remember, I described it as like.
Of course there are, because they're like galaxies. Galaxies are.
It's like
planets are.
It's like an infinite tub of bath bubbles, frothing, expanding and collapsing. If you think of it as like a cosmic bath. I do believe that there are all these things that are expanding and collapsing and all these events that are happening. I just don't believe that the totality of the infinite universe was this thing that was one time encapsulated in any way, except conceptually. You can conceptually conceive of the universe, the totality of the universe as a universal single set, but that's about as close as you're going to get. There is no reason to do it otherwise, on a physical level, in terms of the material universe.
Let's get back to your questions into Pandeism, because we've gotten so far into all these different directions of cosmology and stuff. We're having like a repeat of that episode of the the eternal universe. But that's a separate thing, because we're really talking about you're describing the nature of the physical universe, and that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the potentiality of the universe.
Well, yeah, but can we avoid it? Can we avoid discussing the?
No, but I think you're hung up on it because you want to disprove the common theories, which is fine with me.
Well, no, we just need to try to better understand where your model is and why. And
my model is this. The Big Bang was the seed, and the seed is the beginning of the next tree.
Yeah, but
but that seed came from another tree before that.
And that seed is embraced by an infinite series of seeds. Would you agree with that? That seed is embraced and is deep within.
What do you mean by embraced? Do you mean it's contained within?
It's within an infinite series of seeds. Would you agree?
Outside of itself.
Yeah.
Outside of itself. When we're talking about the universe,
we're inside it
no,
right now.
When we're talking about the universe, no, because it's the universe continuously transforming. If you're talking about all the manifestations within the universe, then yeah.
Well, it's transforming from our point of view, but from within time. But I mean, outside of time, do you believe that the universe is a series of seeds, a seed within a seed within a seed within a seed, a fruit within a fruit within a fruit, a womb within a womb within a womb, an egg.
Yeah, I do, because that's how it's eternal. That's how it's perpetual.
And do you believe that you can encapsulate all those infinite series of eggs or wombs or, fruit into a single thing in the physical universe?
I try to explain this to you in the very beginning. You're hung up on the visualization of it. No, it's not encapsulated, because it's all that is, because it's everything that exists. So of course it can't be contained.
So it's not encapsulated. That's what you just said? I mean, that's okay.
God, life, the universe is not encapsulated in anything. It is all that is.
Okay, and it's infinite.
Right. It's infinite in the macro, and it's infinite in the micro.
Okay, well, that's great.
Both
cool.
ways.
We're on the same page then.
This entire conversation could honestly have been, not that I don't enjoy it or that it's informative for the listeners, but this entire conversation could have been shortcut and avoided if I just explained to you the torus. If you understood the torus,
about the torus, remember,
but if you understood the torus right now,
I visualize the torus. Remember, independently.
Conceptual problems wouldn't be an issue for you.
Remember, my painting incorporates an infinite series of toruses. Remember, so you're talking about a torus and all of its toroidal processes, which I agree with. But my worldview is a torus within a torus within a torus within, and so there is no way to encapsulate the torus. I mean, you can't conceptualize.
I agree, but the torus is more of a it's more helpful in understanding the movement and the energetic pattern. That's the reason, that the spiral, the expansion, the unfolding, the collapsing in on itself, coming back together, the radial pattern that's right behind you. That's part of the torus, like all of it.
Well, we can just look at a flower. Like, forget about the Big Bang for just a moment.
Any flower, a fruit, anything. Yeah, any plant.
We see this expression throughout nature all the time. I'm sure even atoms do it. We don't have any proof of that, but I guarantee you.
No, atoms are toruses. That's exactly what they are.
I totally believe they are, and I get that. I just want to make sure that you believe, or that that what I believe, which is that atom, which encapsulates that story that you're wanting to tell, and the one that I'm wanting to tell, and the one that you may have already tried to express in.
I did.
Yeah, I just want you to know that I see that atom, that fruit, that torus, in a series of toruses, that it can never be encapsulated in the physical world. That's all I'm saying. As long as you know that.
Of course, because the physical world is just one tiny micro universe of, micro expression of it. That's all.
It's series of universes. Yeah. And so we can talk about a beginning, an origin, for the fun of it, to tell stories and stuff and to help explain the universe, which is why I use it as a mechanism, as a device, as a tool to kind of help express certain concepts. But ultimately, like, if you wanted to really know the reality of it, what I really, how I really see it, it's this static, infinite thing that is unchangeable from I'll say its point of view, even though, it can't really perceive itself in that way. But if it had a point of view, it is like the rock. It is like this static statue, this thing.
Yeah, I think that's it's almost a romanticized notion that you may draw comfort from. But the truth is, nothing in nature is static. Everything is always in a state of transition.
You have to realize that my view involves all emotions. So it's not just comforting. It's terrifying. It's scary. It's sad. It's depressing. It's all of those. So it's the whole color wheel. It's the whole season. The whole seasonal wheel. So
you need your own show, brother. let me get back to the questions, and we're never going to get through it. There's 14 questions, and I'm still 15.
We've actually organically covered most of them. I was just now running through to see if I can find some. Yeah. There are a few that I do need to ask that we haven't covered.
I'm still trying to get through number 3. Like, what was God before it was the universe?
Well,
it was the potential. Well, for one, we can't know, but we can extrapolate. So from extrapolation, we know that it must have had all the potential for everything that exists here.
And by the way,
yes,
that was based on a theory that may no longer and may never have held water, by the way. But yeah. But it's still a beautiful synopsis of the universe, because metaphorically speaking, symbolically speaking, we see this behavior in flowers and in seeds. And I am not opposed at all, whenever you want to discuss that philosophy of talking about a beginning and this movement of progression towards higher consciousness. I'm not opposed to that at all, because in terms of a subset of the infinite all, that does happen, and that does represent the totality of it all, conceptually. So I'm cool.
At the end of that question, he says, "What and where is God before it became the universe?" What and where? There is no what and there is no where, because it's literally all that is. It's literally every potential that exists, like played out, acted out. Oh. It's just a complete infinite mind. It's an infinite mind that can do anything that it wants, and it knows everything. It is everywhere. It is all that exists. So in a sense, it's nothing, because it's all knowing. The only way you can actually learn or experience or grow or just, you have to be subjective. You have to separate yourself from yourself, forget a little bit of what you know, and then rediscover it again.
But when you talk about the universe, we're talking about something that we normally traditionally think of as this physical thing, right? With these natural laws.
In scientific terms, we think of it as a location, a locale.
And this thing that has natural unchangeable laws. And so when you say something was not that, it was the negation of that, I want to know what that is. That's all.
That is ineffable.
I'm happy to use certain language, but like we said at the beginning, sometimes we can take that too literally, but I just want to know what that is before it's this.
I'm trying to tell you, it's ineffable. It's incomprehensible, but we know that it contained whatever it was. It had all the potential for everything that exists right now.
Okay. Well, that was the theory that you said at the beginning. That was your theory, and I guess
actually, it's that to me. That's solid. Going back to the law of conservation, is that it had to contain within it everything that exists right now in potential form. Otherwise, everything that exists right now, because there's been no outside intervention. The universe is a self-regulating,
You just said it.
Emergent system.
Said there was no outside intervention. See, in my model, there is absolute outside intervention, because it's two poles of the same thing. There's the inner influence and the outer influence. And they're both at tug of war with each other always.
I mean, are you talking about conscious life forms, manifestations, and the physical location? Because I'm talking about the universe as a whole. There's nothing outside of the universe.
Okay, if you want to talk about the universe as the universal set, yes, there's nothing outside of that. But when you talk about this Big Bang event, which actually brings me to one of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
I guess I'm never going to get through these questions in a succinct chronological way, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's going to be tough, as long as we can approximate and get close.
Because you keep interrupting me, but that's okay. Go ahead.
If you think about when this Big Bang thing happened, if you look at how the universe was distributed, it seems to be very uneven, an uneven distribution. And I'm just curious, in your view, what caused that first offset or that unique signature of differentiation? Because I would think that if it's a perfect singularity, that it would have perfect symmetry.
Who said a singularity is perfect?
Hold on.
Hear me? I'm hearing an echo now. I'm hearing my own voice.
So far, I don't hear an echo, but I thought I did momentarily.
I'm still hearing it. Hello?
Yes.
Guyus, in your mind, you have a lot of idealized notions which feed into your theories. No one ever said the singularity was perfect. The singularity
I never said they did. I never said they did. I'm assuming, based on how they described the singularity, that it started out with perfect symmetry. So my other question would be, why wouldn't it be perfectly? Why wouldn't it have perfect symmetry? So let's start there.
Because nothing in life is perfectly symmetrical. It has to be a little bit off for there to be. It has to be a little bit off for there to be a novelty of expression, and instead of just mirror images of itself. That's exactly how the Fibonacci sequence works. It's exactly how all of nature operates.
That's how I feel.
It replicates with just a little bit of a different. It never exactly copies itself in the same way. Nothing ever happens the same way twice.
Right.
It always happens a little bit differently, which allows it to expand and grow and push and pull and move. But that's what allows for experience. You know.
Yeah, I believe that there can never be a state of perfect symmetry. I believe that there is no such thing as an absolute singularity where something is perfectly symmetrical and
right. Just our geometry and math. You know, we use math in that sense, but those are just constructs because nothing in nature is perfect. Nature is always perfecting itself, and it's always a little bit off, and it's a little bit lacking, and that's what allows for greater growth and complexity and biodiversity. So back to the question. I'm still on number 3.
Oh no, don't worry about 3 because I've been paying attention. We've been moving around.
Let's go to 4. It seems that your view of God chose to annihilate itself. Could God have chosen not to annihilate itself? I say it was more an instinctive reaction, a response to knowing everything, being everything, having all awareness and knowledge, and literally no longer desiring it, because all that nature desires is experience and growth,
right?
And novelty.
We sort of answered that earlier.
And that can't happen if it's a static thing.
I did ask that question, and we were talking about how there can be inclinations to beings, and whether or not you saw the totality of it all as a total being, the Omnia, whether or not it has desires and wants and inclinations. And I was willing to accept that, within your worldview, the Omnia, even though it's not this singular contained thing within the physical universe, but there's this stage that is reached where consciousness, at least as best as it can become the ultimate consciousness.
So you don't agree with it? You're saying you don't, or you do?
No. I'm satisfied with that. As long as we frame it correctly, as long as we, because I share that view. It's in my book.
A real easy way to understand it is look at the internet. Look at the internet and look at what the internet has become, a web of communication and information where people can connect with each other and they can literally almost know anything at lightning speed. And that's just us building a machine that can do it. So take that and project it forward and expand it outward. That's what all life forms, what all beings are going to do, led by, I believe, one or several of the most enlightened beings in the galaxies, in the universe, will lead this charge toward symbiosis and kind of a collective connection with all life. So it's just like the internet. It's just like how you can literally talk to anybody at the same time. You can literally perceive. Just imagine video cameras up everywhere. We can already do this, like surveillance. It's all of those technologies times 10 squared, into the future, advanced. And you'll see that what you end up having is a brain. Exactly what our brains are in the micro. All the neural networking connections. There is no machine that is as complex as even like a single strand of fiber of gray brain matter, and the computations and the neural connections and the synapses, and how the network, the incredible network that exists right now just in the neurons of one singular organism is more than all that exists in the universe. So imagine all of those minds collectively together. You have, in effect, the mind of God. That's where God comes from.
Yeah, my brother and I have fun with this particular topic where we talk about, this ultimate mind and, whether or not our minds contribute as a subset of that overall tree of thought, and, how much
subsets of pantheism. That's the word I couldn't think of earlier, was subsets of pantheism. That's what pantheism is.
When you think of that kind of a mind, the psyche of that kind of a being, certain questions come up like, what is its emotional state? Does it have an emotional state? Does it have depression?
You're framing it within the context of the human experience or of an animal. Emotions are just helpful responses that drive behavior, that drive instinct and stuff like that to protect. If there's no need for defense or protection, the fight or flight response is gone, then emotions are much more equanimity. You have much more equanimity. They're much more balanced and peaceful, where you don't have these extreme highs and lows. You just have reason and logic and perception. You have enjoyment, but there's not this incredible, because like emotions can be viewed as like the fire in the caboose that's like fueling the train, and then the thoughts and stuff are like the direction that it goes, but the emotions are just the fire behind the thoughts. So like an infinite being would not be subject to those emotions, but it would perceive things benevolently, logically, rationally, reasonably, as all logical beings do.
Do you think it would be subject even a little? I mean, somewhat? Like, even though it's not as primal as it used to be, like in the animal kingdom, emotions tend to be even more intense if you look at the animal kingdom.
I would look at them more as thoughts. I would see them more as elevated thoughts.
So do you think this conscious ultimate entity will not have any degree of depression or fear, or
not if everything that exists it is not if it recognizes itself as everything that exists and it's literally in control of everything. There's nothing to be afraid of. I keep coming back to this. Remember what it's like if you're in a dream and you suddenly realize that you're dreaming. You're the god of that world. You're the master of creation.
You remember what my
it's all about concentration.
Do you remember what my response was to that? Because we talked about this before in the past, and I believe that even within the world of dreams, that we're faced with the same old human conditions, the same old rules, the same old hang-up.
The dream is just an analogy. It's just analogous to what we're talking about. Where it's not the same as a dreamer, because a dreamer is subject to their perceptions of reality, their doubts and fears, their subconscious mind. I'm just talking about the notion of becoming lucid and 100% in control of your environment. That aspect of the dream is what I'm specifically referencing.
What influences, like you obviously must believe that there's some kind of differentiation with this entity, because it's got to have some kind of a personality, right? Some kind of.
It contains all personalities. It contains all minds. It contains all thoughts and feelings. It's literally This is getting to what I described in my book, which is you almost become the rock. When you become where you perceive all things all at once, you become like this. It becomes like this homogeneous soup where nothing interesting ever happens because the extremes are gone. You're making my points for me. What you're getting at, the direction, the trajectory that you're going right now.
That's why he annihilates.
Guyus, that is what began the universe. That's exactly why Omnia became scattered and differentiated into trillions of forms. It's exactly why. That you just answered the question somewhere. You asked, was God bored? Why did it lack something? What did it want? The only thing that an infinite being cannot do is experience something new. It can't be afraid of anything. It can't have any challenge. It can't challenge itself. Nothing is a challenge. Nothing is enjoyable because you've reached the pinnacle. You are everything. You have conquered all. It's like Agent Smith, where he literally assimilates he's the new world, or the Matrix becomes all Smiths. He's become everything that exists, and it's misery. It's all one thing, and so it has to start over again. That's the idea of the reset. The reset is the Big Bang.
Just to remind you, that's the one of the key themes of my book, which is what you just what you're describing there. I mean, I do it for slightly different reasons, but ultimately, that ultimate being that can, you see so much becomes, I'll just use the term bored to make it easy, and unfulfilled, put it that way.
Yeah. See, we have to, I mean, there's no way that an infinite God can be unfulfilled, because it has everything that it wants, but that's it, is when you have everything, you become your own limitation. So you need to limit yourself in order to experience something new.
Exactly. It needs to be limited is the key, the word limited. And so that's where he has to fracture himself. Yeah.
Right. Fracture and split apart.
It's great for literature.
You wrote, we had a beginning, there was a start of the natural processes that govern our life. Life is moving toward greater complexity and self-awareness. This is not coming from outside, but from within, from creation itself. Do you believe that all stages of complexity are always present within the all stages of complexity are always present within the infinite universe? That in some areas life is becoming more complex, but in other areas is becoming less complex, and that overall it remains conserved?
Yeah, that's what
It's always becoming more complex. Of course, throughout the galaxies, throughout the cosmos, the solar system, some star systems, some planetary systems, some organisms, some life forms are more complex. Others are further behind. It's not consistent. It's happening all at once and all.
Right, but I view the totality of all that. What you just described, the totality of all that, to me, I believe that is something that's conserved. So it's like a conveyor belt, a cosmic conveyor belt. So you constantly have things that are being constructed and created and going towards complexity, and things that are being deconstructed or destroyed or less complexity or chaos.
Life and death. You're describing biological life and death, really.
You get your toroidal torus or whatever your conveyor belt, and so that I look at this infinite conveyor belt, or this infinite torus or series of toruses, where all these things are always happening. So in terms of literature, it's great to tell about the progression. But my view, and I'm sometimes a little gray or fuzzy on exactly what your stance is on this, but I view that there really ultimately is no true progression in terms of the totality of it all. But there's subsets of progressions, within the context of, evolution.
I want to say something, and it might blow your mind, or you might just get it just like that intuitively. But on this side of eternity, we are in hell because we're not God. But on that side of eternity, God is in hell because it is God, and all it wants is to come back and be subjective and experience fear and loss, and it's crazy, but it wants to experience fear and loss and incompleteness, because that's what it desires, because that is the absence. That's the irony. Where it is right now. That's the absence of all that. So it always will want. So, because this is the nature of life, it always reaches, it always grows, it always goes wherever it can possibly go, without hindrance. And wherever you are, you always appreciate, what you don't have. So. Right. Like, literally, God wants to be finite and fragile and subject to change and entropy. And right now, God, as the universe, as the life forms, we want to be immortal and we want to be eternal, and we want to be all-knowing and all that. And those two pushes are what drive the cycle, the sphere. They're like what I just described is literally using the two polarity system. Magnetically, it's exactly how a toroidal engine works. Right. It fuels itself, and it feeds off of itself, and that's how all life operates. It's literally from two polarities. The push and pull, and you could look at it as dark matter and dark energy. They're doing the exact same thing. Dark matter is literally holding everything together, and dark energy is flying everything apart. It's ripping everything apart, while dark matter is holding it all together. Whether you want to believe in those terms or not, that's literally the polarity of the universe, the yin and yang that you always talk about. The balance is what actually causes. Let's say, I'm trying to think of
it's one of the best mechanisms for literature.
When you have two equal weights, like counterweights, you ever see them, those little gadgets, and they spin and they just can continue spinning forever and ever and ever, because gravity is doing it. Like, gravity pushes and pulls so that there's a continuous. That's what Omnia is doing at all times. It wants to be subjective, but it also wants to be unified. Omnia in me wants to be whole and complete and unified and immortal and eternal and knowing more, knowing everything, and at peace. And Omnia, as Omnia in another form in the future and in the distant past, wants to be right where I am, because where it's at, it's undesirable because it's already experienced it. So it wants to experience something different. And each time it unfolds, it experiences differently, which is where the multiverse actually exists. The multiverse exists at all times, everywhere, not like separate universes, but separate and unique manifestations or unfolding of Omnia as a universe.
Yeah, well, one of the things I explain in my book, The Forever All, is that one of the things nature is always doing is always trying to preserve equilibrium and balance. And so whenever we move towards an extreme, for example, ultimate consciousness, nature, right, the universe always finds a way to cause or influence a kickback or a pushback. And it will find a way to correct that excessive behavior, believe me. And then when you go in the opposite extreme, for example, being too differentiated or not conscious enough, again, nature finds a way to keep and provide this nice undulation between balance. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that undulation can become pretty erratic and pretty, up and down like a yo-yo, and pretty extreme. Those are the horrible times through history, of course, when there's a lot of mass killings and what have you. But ideally, what you want to find in your life, in nature, is to try to find that gentle undulation between balance. Or I agree. It's never going to be perfectly balanced, but If
you look at it, and if you look at the model again, that's a vortex. That's the vortex equilibrium. It's vortex equilibrium. It's exactly what it's doing. Seeking equilibrium through the vortex spiral. And a perfect analogy for this, I was going to say something that equates would be the advancement of technology and all of the wonders of technology, machines, what we have accomplished, and how we've extended our lifespan and improved the quality of life, while at the same time damaging and destroying the environment, the ecosystem, while at the same time what technology has done is isolated us and separated us, and there are all these side effects. So now you have another push toward moving back toward the rustic and the old-fashioned and wanting things to be more simplistic. And the further you go,
exactly,
in some societies and cultures, toward things that are edgy and straight and materialistic, and everything is monochrome and everything is homogenistic. We want diversity, and we also want things to be as they used to be, and we want things that are more sort of rough around the edges and more organic. So yeah, that's what's always happening in every way, everywhere, and the goal is to just find equilibrium and balance, a perfect balance between those two extremes. I agree.
All right, I guess I'm going to ask one of my last questions, because we kind of jumped around and organically covered pretty much all the other questions, and I'll double check them here in a little bit. But the one that I know I didn't ask, which is the last one, do you not believe that you are the Omnia, or as I call it, the Forever All, imprisoned in eternity to experience itself forever and ever in one form to the next?
I'm not imprisoned in any sense. I'm limited by my body. I'm limited by my physical form, of course. But
actually, I'm going to stick with that term. Yeah, imprisoned.
I'm limited by my body. I'm limited by my imagination. I'm limited by the constraints of society and this culture. But imprisoned in eternity to experience itself forever and ever in one form.
Do you not? Let's just stick with the first part first. Do you not believe that you are the Omnia?
I am the Omnia, specifically the ethical mind of Omnia when it comes to how we treat other life forms and other organisms. My benevolent, altruistic inclinations come from the developing emergent mind of Omnia. So,
are you imprisoned? Are you imprisoned in eternity as Omnia?
I mean, it's an abstract question, so can you clarify it? Like, imprisoned in eternity.
Just real quick, I do believe that I am Omnia, that you are Omnia, and that we are imprisoned in eternity to be this eternal thing, to experience itself forever and ever. In one,
I don't think that's a prison. I think that's exactly, it's a joy, it's a delight. It's exactly what it wanted. It's exactly what it wanted. But yeah. I am imprisoned and limited as a human being. Yeah, I have all kinds of limitations as a human.
Just remove the emotion from that term. Because sometimes imprisonment can have usually has a negative connotation to it. But just a fixed. I'll use the word fixed. or do you think you are kept here
fixed to do what?
In eternity? Do you believe that you are trapped? Just kidding. Do you believe that you are kept here in eternity to experience itself? Do you believe that you are?
I know you keep saying it, but I'm trying to comprehend it. Like I am a manifestation of nature, of Omnia. I am the eyes and ears. I always say the heart of God. The eyes and ears of the cosmos, the hands and feet of God. That's what I am. I don't like this particular form. I would rather be just a pure infinite mind. See, I'm pushing to get back to what was before the Big Bang, and there are other parts that have brought me to this level. There are other parts of God, of Omnia, of nature, that wanted this experience to learn, to grow, to experience specifically, even the pain, even the separation, the isolation. It's kind of like the oversimplified notion of within New Age circles that, oh, you chose to come here, you chose to incarnate because you needed to learn something and do some work on your soul, your spirit needed it needed this experience. So if you're born into this horrible situation and you're getting raped and you're a slave or you're being abused, well, that somehow you chose for that. No, I don't buy that bullshit. I don't believe that. Like, literally, the universe chose all of this. It wanted all of this, but it has no control over all the individual experiences and stuff like that. It gains its control as it learns, like through human beings, for example. On this one planet, we learn that killing and murder and lying and stealing and rape and all these terrible things that we do to each other, we do to other animals, is wrong. So we move away from that. So that's our power, is as we learn, our behavior changes and our character develops. So the character of nature is developing through conscious sentient organisms like us. But we are trapped in that sense that we're not all knowing, we're not all seeing, we're not all powerful. But trapped in order to experience itself. I mean, experience is the goal, yeah.
And I was referring to, like, I know you would rather have, or that you might rather have a different subjective point of view as Omnia, like, because you're Poffo, you're Omnia through Poffo. Your Poffo is a human representative of Omnia. But you do see yourself to be Omnia, right?
As much as I see myself as a part of nature, yeah.
But not just a part of it. You are that. You are all of nature. You are Omnia, and all of nature.
All of nature is within me, and I am within all of nature. Yeah.
Okay. Especially Poffo. Poffo is. Yeah. And do you see yourself as a part of? Do you see yourself as Omnia, and that you're going to continue to be Omnia for eternity?
Everything that exists will always be Omnia, because Omnia is everything that exists. Because Omnia means all, everything. So everything that exists will always be Omnia. Omnia will take on different forms and shape and different coherent, forms. Right. But it will never cease to be what it is. It will always be in some way, shape, or form, a manifestation of itself, of its own divine potential.
And do you view yourself to be the totality of that?
In totality, I mean, I am 100% a human being. There's one classification of primate, of mammal, of carbon-based life form. But
I'm not just referring to the human.
I don't see myself really as a totality of anything except frustration.
Do you believe that it's all?
Huh?
Well, do you believe that it's all? Do you believe that it's all one concert that's connected, and that you are that concert? You are that. Your perceiving mind is the summation of all things. That I'm just one little itty bitty tiny speck, like on that tapestry that's behind you. Yeah, that's all I am. I'm not even a hair. I'm not even like a breath. I'm not even a speck of dust. But I am one part of the whole. So, I'm not talking about just the human version, the human vessel. I'm talking about. Do you think that it is all required, that your perceiving mind is the summation of all things? My perceiving mind is limited. My perceiving mind is limited by my senses, my experiences, my environment, my memories, my genetics, all that stuff. So it's not the summation of it. It's the summation of all those things I just mentioned, but it's not the summation of all.
It's not. It's in no way the summation of all things. No. I
Right.
mean, with the internet, we're getting close to pretty much knowing everything now.
Hold on now. With your exact signature of that which is Poffo, including headaches, that is the summation of all elements in the universe that play a role, because it takes the totality of it all. That whole song, that whole concert facilitates Poffo and his headaches, in that moment in time. Those are your roots. That's what came.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm nodding my head because everything you're saying resonates.
Mm-hmm. And that, so when Poffo's eyes open, the perception that Poffo has, the perceiving entity or passenger that you are, that you're within this soup of substance. All these little atoms. I mean, we think of them in one sense as little particles that aren't touching, but in another sense, they're all just waves of energy.
Matter flows from place to place and momentarily comes together to become you.
So where there's this whole ocean of energy that comes together and creates those Poffo eyes that open up and those thoughts that Poffo has and those headaches at certain moments in time. And it's because of all that's what it requires in order to create, headache-rated Poffo, whenever that happens. It took all that exactly as it was, exactly the nature of that, the exact performance of that, the way it was doing it.
If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe.
That's exactly right. Where'd you hear that?
Carl Sagan, man. He's my hero. Essentially, that no one can make an apple pie 100% absolutely, literally from scratch. We can only use the pre-existing ingredients that are already there, that were already present at the Big Bang.
I described a similar, tool, imaginary tool, in my book. I can't remember it for word, but basically, in order to have a goldfish, a pet goldfish, you got to have water. And in order to do that, you got to have a container. And then you got to put the container on something. And then you got to have an atmosphere for so it just goes on and on and on. And you have this infinite requirement, this.
What you're actually describing right now is the interconnectedness of all things, entanglement in quantum mechanics, and the interconnectedness that literally you are not an isolated entity. You are a summation of all things. Exactly. Your body is made up of trillions of different cells, all working in concert and cohesion with one another to formulate and to become the Guyus, the man that you are. Like you're not separate from anything. Like literally, the oxygen that you're breathing in right now, through your veins, all of it, man, is like, there is nothing in this life that does not lean on or touch up against or is directly influenced by something else. Right. And so where do you begin? Where does the universe end and you begin? And there really is no distinction. I mean, for this subjective experience to take place and occur, there has to be subjective forms and contrast and polarity and all these things. But there's got to be a dichotomy there, differentiated, systems and forms. But honestly, in order for all of it to take place and happen,
it takes the whole package.
Yeah, it's all part of everything else.
I try to explain that. I try to explain that to people, and I can't.
That's a fundamental tenet of pantheism: is the interconnectedness, the interdependency of all things.
Yeah, but some people fail to understand that it requires the whole package, and I mean all of it, exactly as it is, in order for any one thing to exist, even the smallest speck, for that to exist the way it does. That requires everything else other than what we're trying to describe in order for it to be shaped to be what it is, both from the outside and from the inside, from the inner universe to the outer universe. It requires all that in order for that to be exactly as it is. So it's an inseparable part. So yes, in one sense, we're subjective beings, and I get that. We're one leaf upon the tree. But in another really more accurate sense, we are the infinite cosmic tree.
You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
Yeah, I've heard that one too before.
Alan Watts.
Is that who said that?
Maybe Alan Watts. He said the wave metaphor as well.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
The wave in the ocean.
I may have gotten that mixed up. But the other quote is you are something. You are a wave of the ocean. Something that the whole ocean is doing. At that moment, like the ocean people, the way the ocean has waves, the ocean, the universe peoples.
Yeah, in fact, let me quickly use the ocean to once again compare my model, possibly. The ocean is always doing this thing that's changing, but we can always stop and look and say, there's the ocean. The ocean will always be the ocean. And so, yes, there's these phases happening within it, and these interesting little things happening. And if you zoom in, even more little interesting things that are happening. But if you take a step back, it's all the infinite ocean, and it's always been there, and it always will be, and it will never change.
Yes,
It'll be the ocean.
That's the conservation of energy, the law of conservation of energy. Yeah. Just to clarify and correct myself, it was Rumi that said, "You are a drop. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop."
Was it him who said that? Okay, yeah. Yeah, when it comes to Alan Watts, I was relatively recently introduced to him some years ago because my YouTube videos, people kept asking me, they said, have you heard of Alan Watts or have you been reading Alan Watts? And I actually got kind of annoyed with it a little bit. I was like, who the hell is this Alan Watts guy?
You never heard of him, really? Yeah, I discovered him a long time ago, and this is great, man. I listen to his lectures all the time, and there's been so many great re-edits with music in the background and stuff.
Yeah. Well, now he's one of my favorite modern day philosophers. I mean, if not my absolute favorite. But, people kept saying, I would ask why are you asking me about this? And they said, well, your views.
He was a pantheist. He was absolutely a pantheist through and through. He was an Eastern mystic. Yeah.
Yeah, that was before I even knew what pantheism was. And that's how I came across the term pantheism, because people would ask me, are you a pantheist? And I was like, what the hell's a pantheist? And so, and they were telling me that his views or my views are very in line with his, or very similar to his. And so I started reading up on him and watching his lectures. I was like, I fell in love with him right away. I found out
you are a function. Go ahead, sorry.
I found out he died the year I was born. I just thought that was kind of cool.
That's weird. Yeah, I know he had he smoked and he drank a lot, so definitely caught up with him. I was about to read his quote. It says, "You are a function of what the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing."
Yeah, that's good.
And then there's you are an aperture through which the universe is looking and exploring itself. Alan Watts.
That's good.
There are so many: Einstein, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle,
and what's his name?
Giordano Bruno. They all said
Carl Sagan.
Brian Cox and Carl Sagan.
Yeah, you are
in many ways they all said this. You are a way for the cosmos
to know itself.
First, experience itself as a human being in subjective form. I actually created a meme. See if I can find it quick. Where I guess this is the Poffo contribution. This is Poffo's contribution to that great legacy of those deep thinkers and explorers in consciousness.
Just so viewers know, this is almond milk, not cow's milk.
What? I'm not even looking. I'm looking up the.
I was holding up my
don't
glass
tell
of
me
milk.
For the sake of the cows, man.
Okay,
here you go.
I was just telling the viewers that's almond milk, not cow's milk.
Yeah, gotcha. Keep your integrity as a vegan.
That's right.
So here's my quote. Here's my contribution to that same thread, because I love it that all 5 or 4 or 5 of those guys all said the same thing in different ways. Actually, that would be a great project to collect all those quotes where they all Brian Cox, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, Einstein. Who am I forgetting? And possibly Giordano Bruno.
And you said Carl
and Rumi. They all end up saying the same thing, which is the most basic.
Eternal truths have a way of cropping up in the minds of men.
I'd like to create like one meme that describes them all, and then add mine onto top, tack mine onto the bottom. So here's mine. When gazing up at the night sky, it is not you that sees the universe. It is the universe seeing itself through the eyes of a human. This is the heart of pantheism.
Here you go. Yeah, I have one that I came up with which was very similar to Carl Sagan's. In fact, when I first heard it, I was like, son of a bitch, because he stole my thunder. But it was almost word for word. I've always said, you are the universe perceiving itself. And another one I used to say is, if all things play an equal part in creating your perception, then in your perception, you should see that you are the all. And then there's been a few other variations of how I said, but I would come across not only that, but like Emerson, when he came, I was explaining the law of compensation to my dad, which was a theory that I came up with, or something that I discovered, and I even called it what he called it, which was the law of compensation. And he asked me, he said, have you been reading Emerson? And I was like, no, why? And because it sounds like what you're describing is his laws of compensation. And I can't remember if at that time I had that phrase, but I thought it was eerie that not only did I come up with the concept of the law of compensation, but I actually called it the law of compensation, which is.
We're all working from the same playbook, man. We're the unconscious, latent memory of Omnia, just coming back into fruition with itself. So that's why, there are these ideas that resonate. They're so similar, and we end up just sort of paraphrasing each other, without it ever knowing.
They pretty much write themselves, because it was inevitable, coming up and discovering the law of compensation when I did, it was pretty much, there was a high probability that I would call it the law of compensation. That's why he did it. That's why Emerson called it. So we all have these similar forces that pull us in certain directions. And I even remember reading about Leonardo da Vinci. I think it was Leonardo da Vinci talked about, he almost used the exact same analogy that I did, which is a child that drops his snow cone or ice cream cone, this one's mine, goes through the same emotional anguish that an adult goes through when he has to experience bankruptcy, or when he has to file for bankruptcy. And so I was trying to show a comparison there, that even though the adult doesn't give a shit about the kid's ice cream cone, and the kid doesn't give a shit about the adult's bankruptcy, they both have that same similar major emotional turmoil.
Loss. Loss is universal. Whatever you deem important, wherever your priorities are, when that thing, whatever it might be, is taken away, then you experience the same. The emotions are ubiquitous.
And Leonardo da Vinci used I think it was him that used the exact same analogy of a kid dropping some kind of food item. I was like, whoa, that just blew my mind.
I gotta throw this in there before you move on to something else, because it's too perfect. I screamed at God for the starving child until I saw the starving child was God screaming at me.
Huh. Who said that?
I don't know. It's unknown.
That's good.
When I say divine, I mean something is the greatest, most powerful, the most impressive thing there is. When I say divinity, I mean in essence, it is the highest form of intelligence, the most beautiful, most elegant, most exquisitely complex and extraordinary thing there is. By all accounts, aesthetically, observably, and tangibly, the only thing that meets this criteria is nature.
That's yours, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember you reading it from you had posted it on Facebook, I think, and yeah, we were both in a thread talking about the term divine. Like, some people had a hang up about pantheists using the term divine, and that was another one of those situations where I sided with your stance, and I thought, no, it's perfectly okay to use the term divine as long as, in terms of the way you define it, treating it in terms of the unbelievable awesomeness and functionality of it all.
Right. It means anything that is exceptional, anything that is extraordinary, and that's nature. Pantheism. In a single leaf of a tree or a tender blade of grass, the awe-inspiring deity manifests itself.
Yes, even within a single atom. The whole story is within that little speck, within that little pollen.
Nature holds the key to our aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and even spiritual satisfaction. Pantheism. Pantheism literally means all is God, or everything is God. You respect nature and you feel deeply spiritual when hiking, swimming in the sea or lake, or experiencing the outdoors. You feel in tune with the earth, and you have a strong love for animals and plants. You consider yourself a spiritual person, and you strive to respect that divinity within everyone and everything.
So are you going down the list? You have a list?
Yeah, I'm just reading a few memes that I have. Pantheism, a religion/philosophy in which nature is the only God, and there is nothing supernatural about it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
What if you can still believe in God, but also embrace science and education? Live free of supernatural authority, not fear divine retribution, nor concern yourself with a heaven above or a hell below, and only live in the now.
Divine retribution in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Even
this is pantheism.
Even though there are negative consequences.
Of course we suffer consequences of our actions. We're all subject to the laws of cause and effect. Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Okay. Here you go. Here's my last one. God is the universal, immortal, unconscious, eminent, and emergent life principle inherently found within all energy matter that is currently manifesting itself as the universe via the laws of nature, and more locally in relation to us as the planet, the biosphere, and all of the Earth's ecosystems, as well as all of its inhabitants. In a word, God is Mother Nature, or as I refer to it, the Omnia.
I've read that one too. These are all familiar to me because you post them, here and there, and I see these, whether it's on your website or within a Facebook discussion, or some of the writings that you sent me in Word docs, and they're good. They're good.
Definitely, and just because this conversation was very complex and deep, and I'm not sure if people could follow it all, so I'm just trying to kind of bring it home and make it tangible, and what we're essentially talking about. We're essentially talking about pantheism and the subsets of pantheism and the different interpretations different pantheists have of these really ineffable, very subtle, extraordinarily powerful and poignant concepts, but they're also very subtle and complex and nuanced. So, just trying to bring it back to that.
Christopher Greenwood, he was also developed an interest in pandeism. I don't know that he absolutely considers himself to be a pandeist. In fact, I think he made it a point to say that he's not concretely declaring himself a pandeist, and that he still thinks of himself as a pantheist, but he was just interested in a lot of it and has been reading up on it, I guess.
Yeah, he's extremely he reads a lot. He's very hungry and driven, and I appreciate his mind. I feel bad that I've not been able to correspond with him as much lately.
I was going to invite him to this particular video session, but I told him that we might get so into this that I kind of wanted it to be a focus on your specific philosophy, not just pandeism, but your take, your world model, your worldview. That we might not have time to, turn it into that kind of a video. And also, I'm not sure if he would be comfortable with the idea that it was being recorded. He acted a little uneasy about that, but he might be cool with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I did ask him.
Get back. Huh? Go ahead.
I did ask him some of these questions because I talked to him just the other day, and I was getting some great responses from him, and kind of having him dive into some of his thoughts there, where he agrees and disagrees with pandeism, and where he disagrees, I think, with deism, just plain deism.
Yeah, we'll have like a hangout. We can have like a session where we can all talk and stuff.
Yeah.
That's no problem. It's just a question of I literally neglected to do today for these two podcasts. I sacrificed one for the other.
How long have we been going?
I've been bogged down. There's a lot of I have no idea.
Did we bring?
It's probably about 3 hours. I would say that we're getting that. Yeah, man, we can wrap it up. I do appreciate your questions. I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah.
I know that it's a lot, and you got a lot going on in your head and stuff. I mean, we can revisit. If you have specific.
Yeah, and the human language is always somewhat of a barrier, but I think I was able to get a good grasp on your view of the universe and how and where certain things were cleared up for me. Whereas
want to understand anything about biopantheism, go out and study biology. Just study life. Like my ontology, my epistemology, my model of existence, my theory of everything can literally be found in a seashell.
Yeah,
it can literally be found in examining a tree. Any form of life, any manifestation of life on this earth, in this universe, tells the whole story right there.
I agree.
All you have to know is, I guess you kind of have to know the story, and then you can see it. But
well, not necessarily. In my book, The Forever All, I wrote exactly what you're talking about. I said the greatest book you could ever read from is, the greatest pages are the pages of nature. You look at the rings of a tree. You look, like you were saying, at the seashell. You may not know the whole totality of it all right away, but these things will feed you information, valuable information, and your worldview. Little pieces of it might not always be correct, your interpretation of things, but the more a person studies and watches nature and reads the pages of nature, the closer they're going to come to getting a glimpse of Omnia and what Omnia is.
Well said, man. I can't say it any better than that. That's the truth. So let's wrap it up, and we can keep talking, after off air or whatever a little bit. But thank you, guys. I do appreciate it, and I hope to all the listeners it was enjoyable and thought provoking and mind expanding, and not too convoluted or confusing. So just say a final word, guys. And we'll sign off.
It was entertaining for me, so I enjoyed it, and informative.
Okay, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. This is our source. This is our life. This is who we are. Please visit our website for more information about this life-changing philosophy. You can also join our Facebook groups by following the links provided in the description box below, and find fellowship with others who share these same ethics and ideals. Whoever you are not alone. The whole universe resides within you. Now and forever, in nature we trust.